This is the water quality team's current lab. We will now show a walkthrough of their typical day. The members arrive at 9. They go into the lab to get the safety vests, water bottles, logbook, and field meters before heading out to the creeks. It takes them an hour to collect the water samples and field data before they head back to the lab. The tests conducted at the two counters differ. We will focus mainly on the colorimeter side. The members prepare for the analyses by pouring the samples from the bottles to the beakers after the equipment is rinsed. After they are finished, they pass the water samples to the other counter. The colorimeter side deals with chemicals, so members have to wear gloves. The tedious process of rinsing continues as the members rinse the test tubes. They then pour the creek water into the tube and add the chemical reagent for the analysis. The reagent should be dissolved fully before it is placed into the colorimeter. The wait time for a test ranges between 3 to 5 minutes. As members chat during this time, they often forget which creek water was tested when the colorimeter finishes the analysis. The result from the colorimeter is recorded on paper. Contents of the tube is then dumped into the waste bucket. The process of the analysis is now done. This process is repeated for all the different tests for each creek sample. On the other side, a member conducts the pH analysis on each sample. She has to rinse the pH meter with distilled water between each test. After all the analyses are done, they clean up and dispose the waste. As the waste contains chemicals, it has to be disposed of safely. The excess creek water is poured onto the grass as it is not hazardous. The bottles are then placed back into the lab. A member also enters the data onto the computer. After, their day at the hatchery is done and the members leave. The work in the lab took about an hour. We noticed that the workflow in the lab is inefficient due to a number of small issues. Therefore, we designed the Mad Lab, which is a redesign of their lab with equipment that aids in the efficiency of their process. The placement of the equipment and stations in the Mad Lab is based on their workflow. We will now go through each issue and explain how our design solution intervenes and provides a better experience. Currently, it is inconvenient to access the field equipment as members have to go inside the lab. Our solution allows members to easily access the equipment by having the bottles and equipment stored in drawers outside the room. Members currently have to unlock the lab with keys and note down who is present that day on paper. On the other hand, the Mad Lab allows members to easily enter the lab through fingerprint access, accounting for security measures and attendance in one step. After the field work, members have to prepare for the analyses by ordering the bottles and beakers, and then pouring the samples into the beakers. It becomes more inconvenient when the bottles have to be passed between the counters. In our solution, when the bottles are placed back into the cabinet outside the lab, the bottles are ordered using RFID tags found on the bottles' labels. The bottles are then presented to the colorimeter station on a rack along with the beakers. The test tube rack, which is ordered the same way as the bottles and beakers, rise up as well. Members can then pour the water from the bottles into the beakers in front of them. The bottles are then passed to the other counter when a member presses the button beside the rack. The beakers stay out of the wall to provide an easy reach for the member. Currently, the box of gloves is on the counter, which limits their counter space. In the Mad Lab, members grab gloves from the gloves compartment on the side of the counter. Also, in their current workflow, members use reagents that come in packages. This leaves the counter space messy and cluttered. Our solution eliminates the packaging and instead a reagent dispenser replaces it. When a member pushes a test tube under a dispenser, it dispenses a set amount of reagent. When it finishes dispensing, it clicks to notify the member. This automatic dispensing also prevents the hassle of opening the package and having to accurately pour its content into the tube. The dispensers are also clearly labeled and the levels of each reagent is displayed. Currently, members have a tedious rinsing process of rinsing each equipment with distilled water. In the Mad Lab, members can now place equipment into the automatic rinsing station for convenience. There is also a rinsing gun for equipment that cannot be placed inside the rinsing station, such as the pH meter. In this case, the member can now easily reach and use the rinsing gun to rinse the pH meter. As we saw earlier, the wait time is 3 to 5 minutes long, so members often forget which creek they are testing. In our redesigned lab, the rack and equipment are all clearly labeled. Even if members forget, they can easily recall which creek water is being tested by looking at the label. Thus, members can also rinse the next test tube during this wait time without worrying they will forget. The current manner of disposing waste is using a waste bucket and then disposing its contents outside the lab. Our design solves this inconvenience by having a waste draining pipe on the edge of the counter. This pipe is leveled with the counter and has funnel-like openings to prevent splashes. All the waste drain to a central point that is then safely disposed. Members currently record results onto a sheet of paper and then enter the data on a computer. Our solution proposes a tablet that members can directly input the results into after each analysis. Currently, members clean up the lab by rinsing all the equipment manually. In the Mad Lab, members ensure that all the equipment is placed back into the racks, and then with the press of a button, they are all sent to the cleaning station for an automatic rinsing process. The openings on the waste draining pipes also close as the rinsing process cleans the inside of the pipes. Lastly, members have to lock up the lab before leaving. Our redesigned lab allows members to exit the lab without worrying about security, as the room will lock behind them. What takes an hour to do in their current lab now takes roughly 40 minutes in the Mad Lab. Though the workflow is not significantly faster in our Mad Lab, the interactions with the automatic processes and convenient placement of equipment provides a better experience for the members.